Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Australian Bitcoin podcast. I'm Justin, your host for this episode. At the time of this recording, Bitcoin's block height is at 725,359, and Bitcoin's price in Australian dollars is 60,850. Today's episode will focus on Bitcoin wallet options, particularly a selection of hardware wallets. To help me out, I'm joined by Daniel from hardblock.com.au. Australia's first and oldest Bitcoin-only exchange. Now, to start with, it's worth noting that there are lots of different types of wallets. So you've probably heard of mobile wallets or desktop wallets or hardware wallets, as well as things like cold and hot wallets. So I want to just open up a discussion about what do those things mean. So could we define what is a cold wallet? Is there a simple way of defining that? What do you think?
What's a cold wallet?
Yeah, what's a cold wallet? Like, what would you have as a criteria for you personally if someone said this is a cold wallet?
Yeah, sure. I think it has to be offline. That's what my criteria would be. It's disconnected from the internet, and I would say once there has been a connection to the internet, it's not a cold wallet anymore. So actually. And there's a discussion here: are hardware wallets actually cold wallets? I mean, what's your take on it?
Yeah, like your definition is pretty much the same that I would use. So a cold wallet means it has not been online before, whereas a hot wallet, which is often mobile wallets, desktop wallets, that generally has connected to the internet. And I guess the thing that makes it a bit difficult is the way that hardware wallets work is they can connect to the internet, but they do it in a way where they try to stop your seed, your private key, from actually touching the internet, so to speak. So what I mean by that is some hardware wallets are what's called air-gapped, which means they're not connected to any computer via USB or even via something like wireless or Bluetooth. So they're not connected whatsoever, which means even though you're accessing the seed and the private key within the hardware wallet, it's not connected to the device that's connected to the internet, like your laptop, for example. The other way they tend to do it is with what's called a secure element. So you would think of a hardware wallet looks a little bit like a USB in some cases. And inside of that, it's like there's another separate device called a secure element, which keeps your private key or your seed secure. And even if you do connect your hardware wallet to a computer, the intention of that secure element is that the seed or the private key remains inside the secure element and never comes out, which means even if your hardware wallet is connected to your computer, which is connected to the internet, you could still say that there's some level of protection there because of the secure element.
So would you say a hardware wallet is a cold wallet or not?
I would say most hardware wallets are cold wallets, but it depends on how you use them. And generally the way that they're designed is that you can use them sort of as designed and they should remain a cold wallet.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. Yeah. So I think it's kind of a bit ambiguous because I would actually probably say I would not classify them as a cold wallet. Most of them, maybe the air-gapped ones, I would. But the ones that are not air-gapped, I would not say they're cold wallets because there is actually an internet connection there. And the keys never leave the hardware wallet, but the actual transactions get signed. So they get sent, there's a connection there, and they get signed on the hardware device and then sent back to the computer. But since there is a connection there and the computer there is connected to the internet, my take would be that strictly speaking, hardware wallet isn't a cold wallet. But again, it's a bit blurry.
That's true. And again, it depends on the implementation. So maybe we'll get into a couple of examples of different types of hardware wallets. So the one that I use is called a Coldcard, which is completely air-gapped. You don't plug that into a computer. And there is also a secure element within the Coldcard. So I would consider that to be a true cold wallet in the sense that it never connects directly to the internet and never connects to a device that connects to the internet either. Whereas there's two other very prominent hardware wallets, and don't get me wrong, there's not just these three that we talk about today. There is more than this, but these are the most prominent. There's also Trezor and Ledger. And from my understanding, Trezor doesn't have a secure element, while Ledger does have a secure element. And both devices do connect to a computer. So I guess with this sort of definition of a cold wallet is only offline, you might say a Trezor and a Ledger aren't strictly cold wallets, even though they have some protections in place. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about, because this is for beginners, how would you use one of these devices? And so we've all had a bit of an experiment with different types of hardware wallets. And by we all, I mean a hard block. We've tested a few out. So I was curious to pick your brain, Daniel, about the Trezor wallet. How does it work roughly?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the Trezor wallet. So Trezor is actually the first wallet, the first hardware wallet that came into existence. So it was created by Satoshi Labs. I think it was back in around 2013 or 14. It has a long kind of reputation and has a good reputation. The company that created it, Satoshi Lab, is a very reputable Bitcoin company. They also created the first mining pool. I think they really adhere to the ethos of Bitcoin. And I think that's important because, like, who is actually creating the wallet? I mean, there's a bit of trust there. So you want to know that it's created by trustworthy and reputable people. And I believe Satoshi Labs, who created it, are such people. So to summarize it, it's key things. It is open source. It's not air-gapped. It does not have a secure element.
And how would someone use it? Yeah. So you take it and you plug it into your device, don't you? Like your computer.
Correct. Yeah. So basically it's a little similar to a little USB device. You plug it into your computer. You need to plug it in to use it, and then you need to use the wallet software on your computer. So you can it's web-based, or you can install a version of the software on your desktop. And but to use the software to actually send the transactions, you need the physical USB device plugged in. So that's how it works. So with Trezor, there's two different versions of a Trezor wallet. There's the Trezor T and there's the Trezor One. Difference between them is the Trezor T is around 294 Australian dollars. The Trezor One is 92. So Trezor One is significantly cheaper. And I would suggest that for most people, Trezor One is good enough. I don't think they need the Trezor T. But just brief, because I often get this question, what's the difference, which one they should get? I think Trezor One is good enough. But some differences between the Trezor T and the Trezor One is the Trezor T has a USB-C connection as opposed to Trezor One, which has a micro USB. So it's a bit more sturdy. It doesn't fall out as much. It's better. The Trezor T has a screen where you can actually enter your passphrase on the screen of the device, where with the Trezor One, you enter the passphrase on your computer. The Trezor T also has more support for shitcoins. Probably most notably, Trezor T supports Monero, and Monero is actually, as far as shitcoins go.
It's my favorite shitcoin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, mine too. So actually, the Trezor One doesn't support Monero, but the Trezor T does support Monero. The other key difference between Trezor and the other wallets is Trezor is completely open sourced. There's actually schematics online for the actual code of the wallet, but also the firmware and everything. So you can, if somebody wants, they can get a soldering iron, buy the equipment. It actually lists what other parts, and you can just recreate it yourself. You don't need to buy it. You can buy the components and just create the whole hardware wallet yourself. Everything is there. Everything is open source. So there's some benefits for that. And again, it goes kind of to the ethos of Bitcoin about being open source. And the benefit from a security perspective is because everything is open, it's visible, and people can analyze it and find any vulnerabilities and report them.
I'll just jump in there really quickly with something. I think that's a really good point, because sometimes people will say, oh, well, what's the point of it being open source? I can't check the code myself anyway. But the thing is, it's not about us individually checking the code. It's about having a community and knowing that there are a lot of other people, especially adversaries. There's competitors of Trezor that will be looking over Trezor's code, looking for issues so they can say, hey, look, there's an issue here. Why don't you use our hardware wallet instead? So generally open source, it just gives you the peace of mind to know that there's been many, many eyes, perhaps with more expertise than ourselves, have looked over it. And therefore, even if you can't, you're not a coder and you don't know how to analyze it, someone else has.
So, correct. I agree. So another difference is between the other wallets is it does not have a secure element.
Mm.
So again, there's some benefits and downsides to that. So a secure element is an element within the device that's much more secure and prevents different types of side channel attacks.
Mm.
So Trezor does not have it, but usually these secure elements are closed source. The other wallets which have those elements, again, we don't actually know what's inside those elements, so we don't know what's happening there. Trezor doesn't have them, but we know what's there.
That's true, yeah. That applies to most hardware wallets, except for Coldcard. So Coldcard has an open source secure element, whereas, say, Ledger, for example, doesn't. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, okay. So I just one other thing I wanted to address regarding Trezor wallet. About 1 or 2 years ago, there was a disclosure of a vulnerability. So Kraken, the exchange, made a disclosure about a vulnerability in Trezor, and it's related to not having the secure element. The vulnerability was an attacker had the actual physical Trezor device. They could pretty cheaply extract the seed phrase and then brute force the PIN to access the wallet. So that's a reasonably serious vulnerability. Having said that, though, it's important to remember this was only something that was demonstrated in kind of experimental conditions. There's no evidence that this has been exploited in the wild.
True.
And that's in security, that's something that has to be taken into account of, because often attacks are demonstrated in a lab environment, but it's like how often are these actually used in real life? There's no demonstration this was. But that is a vulnerability. That vulnerability hasn't been actually fixed. It's not. I don't think it's possible to fix it without creating a secure element. There is a way to prevent it is by having an additional passphrase.
Mm-hmm.
So what's actually recommended is to have a passphrase with your hardware wallet, which is the seed. So to differentiate between the seed phrase and the passphrase. The seed phrase is what restores the wallet, but the passphrase is kind of like an addition towards the seed phrase. It's like the 25th word of the seed phrase. So it's an extra password. So it makes it a bit more complicated to use because each time you try to use the wallet, you don't have to just plug it in. You have to enter like a big long password. But having that long password prevents the vulnerability in case an attacker has a physical device. If you have a passphrase, if they have a physical device, they cannot steal your funds.
I want to jump in maybe and just quickly define, because I think passphrases are a really cool tool that seem to be underutilized. So if you think about, you have your seed words, which is either 12 to 24 words that restores the wallet, and the passphrase ends up being called either a 13th word or a 25th word, depending on how many your original seed words were, whether they're 12 or 24. But the point being is that your wallet is restored by combining those two. So if you have, say, a 24-word seed phrase, and then you also have a passphrase on top, you actually need both to be able to restore your wallet. And what that means is, say if someone got the Trezor, they're able to extract it, which it probably is a very, very technical and complicated process, not accessible to many people. But if they were able to do it, they would just get your original seed words. They wouldn't also get the passphrase, which means they would be restoring a different wallet. And that's kind of the cool part about using passphrases too, is that it gives a level of plausible deniability. So you might have your seed words written down somewhere, and then you have your passphrase written down somewhere separately. And say, for example, if you were ever forced to disclose your wallet, you could just disclose the original seed words, which would generate an entirely different wallet compared to if you disclose both your seed words and your passphrase together. So it adds an additional level of security and lets you almost have a decoy wallet. So what some people do is they'll have, say, just their original seed words, the 12 or 24 words. They'll put in a very small amount, a couple of $100 maybe worth of Bitcoin. But then they'll have their actual wallet, which is those same 12 to 24 seed words, plus the passphrase. And so if they're ever forced to disclose their wallet, they just disclose the original 12 to 24 words. And the attacker, they only get access to a couple of $100 worth of Bitcoin. And that seems plausible because there is actually Bitcoin in that wallet, whereas you get to keep your full wallet, which is the 12 to 24 C words plus the passphrase. So I think it's just good to clarify that, because sometimes we mix up passphrase with password and we think it's like a whole separate thing, but it's actually part of your seed words, but can be used with Trezors, even Ledger and Coldcard. In fact, most wallets have the ability to add a passphrase to your 12 to 24 word seed phrase, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And something else again regarding that to remember is, if you don't have a passphrase, and a lot of people don't put it on, it's more convenient. Fundamentally, you're just relying on the security of the physical device. And why this vulnerability has been found in Trezor, and I don't believe Ledger has this vulnerability, even in Ledger, if you don't have a passphrase, relying on the physical device to just keep you secure, it's somewhat risky, because it basically means that just the seed phrase is there on the physical device, and somebody can work out the hardware. They can figure out how to get it. What I really want to try and get across is, in this vulnerability is just in Trezor, as far as I'm aware, it could very easily be found to happen in other hardware wallets if you don't have a passphrase. But again, it's important to remember what the point of hardware wallets is, and they're meant to prevent is remote attacks.
Yes.
So you get up in the morning, you check your computer, and your bitcoins are stolen. That's not going to happen with a hardware device, because even with this attack, they need the actual physical device.
That's exactly right. I do like passphrases because it allows you to almost have multiple wallets. So I know how some people use it, where they'll have their seed phrase, and then they'll have maybe 2 or 3 passphrases. One's for personal, one's for maybe a super fund or work, and then maybe one is for spending. And then, of course, they could have a decoy wallet in there as well that doesn't even have a passphrase. So it's, really advanced. Well, not as advanced once you get your head around it, but it is a bit more advanced in how most people use their seed words. And of course, it adds that additional level of security on top of what the hardware wallet device is doing, which is kind of mitigating a lot of attack vectors, except for that very physical one, if someone actually gets the device itself.
I feel we could almost have another podcast on the need for passphrases.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a pretty cool idea. And it's something that's not really talked about a lot and is very kind of confusing sometimes. But yeah, it's certainly a good tool for the toolkit, whether in combination with hardware wallets or not.
Yeah.
So I want to move on to the Ledger and the Coldcard. I'll go through the Ledger relatively quickly because it has a lot of features that the Trezor does, in the sense that it has shitcoin support. It has Bitcoin support, of course. It is a closed source hardware and firmware, though, which is very, very different to Trezor, which is open source hardware and firmware. The Ledger doesn't have an air gap, similar to the Trezor, because you need to plug it into your computer. However, the Ledger does have what's called a secure element, which is intended to give it an additional level of security, even if you do plug it into a compromised device. However, the secure element is closed source, so it's very difficult to verify. Well, in fact, it's impossible to verify that claim. So that, in my mind, the difference between these two, so the Ledger and the Trezor, is that although the Trezor has shitcoin support, you get to choose the firmware that you install on it. And they do have a Bitcoin-only firmware, which means you can just install that if you only intend to use it for Bitcoin. And the benefit of doing that is that by not installing any of the shitcoin firmware on the hardware wallet, is you remove any potential attack vectors that could be in that software itself. Whereas the Ledger doesn't give you as much of the ability to do that. You do install different types of firmware for the Ledger, depending on the coin support that you want. However, my understanding is that the base firmware still has the capability to interact with shitcoins, which means there could be potentially attack vectors or attack options there that wouldn't be found on the Trezor if the Trezor is just running Bitcoin only. So, I mean, that gets a little bit into the nuance or the detail, but I think it's useful to know that even though sometimes people will say both Trezor and Ledger have shitcoin support, Trezor is a little bit more focused on being Bitcoin only by providing a Bitcoin only firmware to reduce your attack surface.
Okay.
The other thing I want to mention about Ledger is that I guess the parts which I don't like so much about it is that it is closed source, which I mentioned before, but also they don't have the best track record. So Trezor has a great track record in terms of privacy, in terms of the Bitcoin ethos, whereas Ledger I couldn't say as much. So around 2020, there was a data leak on Ledger's store, which leaked essentially all of their customers' data from home addresses to wherever their ledger was delivered, as well as first name, last name, phone numbers, email addresses. The problem with this, because a lot of places do end up having a data breach, but the problem with this is that Ledger did not disclose it initially. It took them several months to initially disclose several 100,000 user data was leaked. And then that number grew to around 1 million. And then eventually it finally landed on something like 1.7 million users' data was leaked, which might be their entire user database. It hasn't been clear what they've done to circumvent that happening again in future, which means there's a possibility the same thing could happen. So what this meant practically was that anyone who bought a ledger and had it delivered to their home, basically anyone who might want to, say, take that Bitcoin, now has a very, very long list of people's addresses, knowing that they've ordered a ledger. On top of that, they have contact details. So there was a lot of phishing attempts made where people were receiving text messages and emails saying, oh, we're contacting you from Ledger. Click this link because we think your device is being compromised. Of course, by clicking this link, you're installing some sort of malware on a device that you have. That might not give them access directly to your Ledger, but it does give them access to your devices, which normally there's plenty of sensitive data on there anyway. So I guess it's useful to keep in mind the reputation of an organization, as how they deal with things like data breaches in the past or in the future, as well as, again, that whole concept of closed source makes it very difficult to verify claims.
Yeah, right. And what I would add to that is people often say that it was just the website that got hacked, not the physical device, which is true. But to me, if your business is security, like Ledger, you should secure your website.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Definitely.
It's kind of, if you can't secure your website and you make a mistake there, can we trust you to not make a mistake somewhere else? And it does actually impact the security of their wallets indirectly. You could say it's a side channel attack by making the customers' addresses visible, so somebody can use the $5 range attack.
Yeah, that's right.
On the customers. So you could even argue this is a kind of side channel attack.
And the transparency to me is really the icing on the cake. The Bitcoin ethos is open source. So by Ledger not disclosing this until they absolutely had to, and then underestimating, in quotations, the number, and then it ended up being somewhat like 10 times that amount of users' data was leaked. To me, that's somewhat of a cause for concern. It's hard to trust a company like that doesn't have that transparency and won't volunteer the transparency themselves. So moving on to Coldcard, which is the final hardware wallet that we'll talk about. Going back to that conversation about, is a hardware wallet truly air-gapped or truly cold? Coldcard is the only one that is truly air-gapped because you don't plug it into a device. So the way that it works is you use either the device as a standalone, which means that you would say, and just quickly so you understand what it looks like, it's about the size of the palm of your hand and it looks like a calculator. And you can generate your seed words with the Coldcard, or you can enter in seed words that you already have into the Coldcard. And then using the Coldcard by itself, you can then generate receiving addresses, which you can then use their display, which shows a QR code. And say if you were getting paid salary in Bitcoin, that might go into like a hot wallet, like a mobile wallet that you have. You would then just scan the QR receiving address on your Coldcard with your mobile wallet, and you would send whatever Bitcoin you want into your Coldcard, and it would just remain there. Alternatively, you can actually use the Coldcard with another type of software wallet. They don't have their own software wallet, whereas Trezor and Ledger do, but it integrates with the vast majority of software wallets like Sparrow Wallet or Blue Wallet. And the way that it interacts is just through micro SD. So you would go on the Coldcard, you would say, I want to export this to another wallet. So I can watch my balances on that other wallet, or I can construct transactions on that other wallet. And the the Coldcard would export the file that you need onto a little micro USB or micro SD card. You would put that micro SD card into your computer or whatever device you're using, and you'd be able to have what's called like a watch-only wallet, where you can then watch all the transactions come in or come out from your hardware wallet. And of course, you can construct transactions too from that software. And then you put that onto a micro SD, put that back into the Coldcard, sign the transaction with the Coldcard, take the micro SD back to the original device, and then you can send it. So the idea being is that any communication back and forth from your software wallet and your device like your computer and the Coldcard, it's all done via micro SD card, which gives it that kind of truly air-gapped feature. The other thing that's kind of cool, I did mention the display screen, which the Trezor also has, and I think that does make it really easy to use, kind of like a standalone. But the other thing that Coldcard has, which I think makes it more secure in some ways, is they have this implementation called Seed XOR. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Basically, what that does is it takes your seed words, either a 12 to 24 word standard seed words, and it can split that up into multiple other seed words. So as an example, it might take 12 seed word phrase and it splits that up into 3 other 12 seed word phrases. Now, each of those 12 seed word phrases is an individual wallet by itself. However, if you combine them together, it gives you your original wallet. So the benefit of that is that you can split up your original 12-word seed phrase into 3 new 12-word seed phrases and perhaps distribute them, store them in different locations. And each of them is a decoy. Each of them might have a small amount of Bitcoin in it. So if someone gets that, they don't get your full stack, of course. And you also know that someone's compromised it because you can see those funds have moved. However, when the time comes where you want to get back to your very original, the true 12-word seed phrase, you need to then go collect those separate 3 times 12-word seed phrases that is generated, combine them together to get your original words. It probably sounds very complicated, but I guess the point there is that you can split your actual seed words up into smaller seed words, which can work like individual wallets. Good decoys, maybe good to give to family members. There's lots of different ways that you can run it to back up your seed words and with a bit more sophistication.
Justin, so I know Trezor and I believe Ledger can be used also as a universal token to log into websites.
True.
And such. Can Coldcard be used like that also?
Coldcard cannot be used like that. So it doesn't have like a 2-factor authentication type function or a password management type function like Trezor does.
Okay. Yeah. So Trezor can be used as for your password manager and such things like that, even separate to its cryptocurrency, Bitcoin.
That's right. As a point there, the downside to using the Trezor in that fashion is that you would need to take it with you everywhere you go as a 2-factor authentication device or a password manager. So you would need to keep your Bitcoin with you everywhere in your Trezor and plug it into a device anytime you wanted a password manager. The other part that I didn't like about that, because I did look into that originally as perhaps a management device for myself, is that the only software that you can use with Trezor for their password manager is a Google Chrome extension. And if you've read any of my Twitter posts, you know that I'm very much against Google Chrome. I think there's some very good privacy maintaining browsers. For users that see their threat model as being relatively low risk, that might not be an issue. But I personally wouldn't like to carry my Trezor with me everywhere just as a password manager. I have to plug it into my computer each time, and then also use Google Chrome to be able to manage it. But it's definitely got that option. And really all these things depend on your individual circumstances and whether or not that meets your threat model. Like who do you think might be getting a hold of your Trezor or what is actually on there? I guess a final point on both the Ledger and the Coldcard, and maybe, let me know if this is the same, Daniel, with Trezor, is that they have, say, like a duress pin. So on the Coldcard, there's something called a duress pin where if someone, like a $5 wrench attacker says, all right, give me your Bitcoin, put in the passphrase, put in the seed words, put in the pin, whatever you need to, you can actually put in a specific pin that you set earlier that will cause a different wallet to open up on the Coldcard, like a decoy wallet. There's also a different type of duress pin that'll actually brick the entire Coldcard. So it just turns the Coldcard into something that's now unusable forever. If you did that, of course, you need to now go buy a new Coldcard. The Ledger has something similar where you can actually have a passphrase login with your Trezor as well as just the original seed words with your Trezor. So one of them could be a decoy. So someone asks you to put in the pin, you put in the pin to the decoy, and you're roughly safe. Does the Trezor have something like that? Apart from the passphrase, I guess?
Yeah, I'm not aware. You can create a separate wallet with a separate passphrase, and you can use that as a decoy.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of anything like that.
Like a duress or a brick pin. I think the passphrase does more than enough because that's really, if you had a $5 wrench attacker saying, open up your hardware wallet, and then you bricked the hardware wallet, I think they might know that that you've got a strategy there. Whereas if you open up a decoy, which simply all you need is a different passphrase, that would be more than enough. So the Trezor's probably got good security comparable as well.
Right. For the audience who might not be familiar with the term, what's a $5 wrench attack?
$5 wrench attack is probably the cheapest type of hack attack, because it's not really a hack. It's someone that goes and buys a $5 wrench from the hardware store, which is probably actually more like a $10 wrench attack now with inflation. They then bring that $5 or $10 wrench to your house because they know you have Bitcoin because a ledger leaked your details, unfortunately. They knock on the door, you open the door, they say, I'm going to bash you with this $5 or $10 wrench unless you give me your Bitcoin, which I know you own because I've seen your name on this list of 1.7 million users whose data was leaked. So that's a $5 wrench attack. And that's why it's good to have something in mind for that, because although it's unlikely, it's probably the lowest hanging fruit for an attacker to get Bitcoin, because hacking someone remotely, or getting physical access to a hardware wallet and being able to extract the seed words, that's all very sophisticated. It usually requires specific hardware, a lot of knowledge about hacking and those sort of attacks. So $5 wrench attack or $10 wrench attack is more accessible. So something that you definitely want to keep in mind as low hanging fruit that you want to mitigate against.
Yeah, and something I just also wanted to add is we talk about these attacks, and I hope we're not scaring people because it's important to remember, because I don't really know of hardly any situations where people lost Bitcoins due to an attack.
Likewise.
In hardware wallets. It's much better than holding your Bitcoin on an exchange. And I've had plenty of cases of people losing money in such a situation.
True.
Like attacks on hardware wallets were basically unheard of. And just to give you an example, we talk about all these complicated attack vectors and things. The attacks I have heard on hardware wallets, and this might be very amusing, it's a very simple, basic attack, which was basically some people on eBay, they were selling hardware wallets, and you might think, oh, they physically tampered, they done some crazy stuff, but that wasn't the case. They were selling the hardware wallets. The wallets were genuine, but they simply shipped the wallets with the seed phrase already. And people who weren't familiar with what they were doing, instead of creating a new wallet with a new seed phrase, they thought they had to use the existing seed phrase because the attackers provided them instruction, use this seed phrase to create your wallet.
Yeah.
But they actually restored a wallet which the attacker created. And when they put money onto it, the attacker had access to the wallet. So it's a very simple, very basic kind of attack. And that's the only thing I heard of. And that was pretty rare. But I think just illustrates, we talk about all these complicated things, but it's actually something simple like that got some people.
Very true. And I think the other one, probably the most common way that people say lose access to their Bitcoin is that they set up a wallet, but then they don't go through the process of recovering it. As in trying to delete that wallet and now redo it and just make sure that you can get access to it, because it's really user error that tends to be the biggest issue. And then, of course, simple attacks like the one that Daniel just mentioned, having an intermediary put a seed phrase on there for you and say, you have to use this one. So it's just good things to keep in mind. Well, I think that's probably enough for what we intended to cover in this episode, which is just giving people an idea of especially hardware wallets and cold wallets. And we'll talk in a future episode about different types of software wallets, which is when you have a wallet on your desktop or on your mobile device. And of course, you can integrate software wallets with hardware wallets. And we talked a little bit about that in this episode, but we will go into that in more detail next time. So thank you for your time, Daniel. Do you have any kind of final words or goodbyes?
Yes. I hope that was useful to people about hardware wallets, that they learned some useful tips. And I guess I would say we do help people with setting up hardware wallets at Hardblock. So if you think this might be too complicated for you, it's actually not that complicated. But if you do want some help, you can contact us and we'll try and help you out.
Absolutely. Yeah, always happy to handhold. And what users tend to find is the first time they set it up, it seems very clunky and confusing. By the time they restore everything from scratch, it becomes a little bit more familiar. And by the time you get to that third try, it becomes second nature. And there's only so much that you can do with a hardware wallet. It becomes a little bit clearer. And then you have a better understanding of how Bitcoin works, how it's restored from seed words or seed words plus a passphrase. and just how the hardware wallet functions and what could go wrong with it, which is very little. So I think it's a useful investment. And again, any difficulties, please reach out and let us know.
Yeah, and the way we done it in the past was we sat with somebody and we helped them set up a demonstration wallet, then restore it. And after that, we wiped it. So they knew how to do it. And then they actually do their own real wallet by themselves.
Just as a final point for myself before we finish up is that make sure you always back up your seed words, because even though we're talking about putting the seed words into a hardware wallet, maybe with the passphrase, maybe not, and that gives you all this extra level of security because of things like the air gap or the secure element, it is really important that you keep your seed words written down somewhere or even imprinted into metal. So it's fireproof, waterproof. Basically, any usual damage that might happen to a piece of paper wouldn't happen to a metal seed phrase on a metal plate. So I guess the point there is hardware wallet's important, but storing your seed phrase, very, very important too. Always something to keep in mind. Well, that's it for this episode, guys. Thanks very much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Let us know in the comments or reach out to us on Twitter.